Thank you so much for that introduction, Peter. My name is Lucia, and I'm an undergraduate senior at Brown studying modern culture and media and English. The title of my thesis keeps changing, so I've just presented these four terms here, and investigating the relationship between them is going to be my central project. So I'm just going to dive right into the material I've been working with, since I think that's the most efficient way to show what my project is about. What are the forms of non-reading and what are the non-forms a reading might take? Poetry equals wallpaper, novel equals design object, text as ambient soundtrack. Duchamp wanted to create works of art that were non-retinal. It would be nice to create works of literature that didn't have to be read but could be looked at, like placemats. The most exasperating thing in a poetry reading is always the sound of a poet reading. This passage opens up contemporary poet Tan Lin's book, 7 Controlled Vocabularies and Obituary, 2004, The Joy of Cooking, published in 2010. I'm not going to do a close reading for the sake of time, but these kinds of declarations and prose formations are repeated with changes throughout the book in what could be described as an iterative process, both in the computational and the linguistic sense. In these aesthetic edicts, Lin advocates for poetic texts that imitate the forms of expression found in greeting cards, video monitors turned off, and central air conditioning, among other things. So this suggests that all of these different objects can act as containers for the same kind of encounter. Perhaps we could call this reading, perhaps looking, perhaps writing, or something else. This potential something else is related to the word ambient in this passage, which I will come back to later. The work 7 Controlled Vocabularies itself has been proliferated or iterated across many different media. In addition to being a physical book, it has appeared as a video installation, which you can see on the left, and editions of the book have also been released as free PDFs online, with the encouragement to readers to re-upload for their own republication. Here we could view the language within the poems as information turned into data able to be passed between media or users without corruption. But there's also a material specificity to these different formats, which you can start to see just by looking at these images. And this is one of the central tensions I'm interested in. Using Google Translate, the book was also translated into Chinese and then back into English and published in those editions. There is a self-reflexive structure here in the sense of a recursive algorithm or a cybernetic feedback loop. And there's also an explicit expansion of the notion of poetic authorship to include technology itself. There are many images in the book, many of which contain text. Sometimes this text is illegible because the image is too small or too pixelated, creating a slippage between text and image, or reading and looking, that feels reminiscent of how we encounter infinitely reproduced and proliferated signs in the digital landscape, or in a culture that seems to be turning ever more toward the visual. And then here's another example of a 2-page spread from the book where we have a troubling of the distinction between writing, image, and code. So going off of these couple examples from the book, I'm interested in how Tan Lin's work can help us understand reading, which I'm using here as an expanded term that could also encompass looking and writing, how we might understand reading as a digital technology. In my thesis project, I plan to read his poetry through writing on cybernetic theory and digital structures as they relate to theories of language. A central concept I will have to deal with here is ambience, a word Lin has often used both in and outside his poetry. Most relevant to my research is the concept of ambient poetics, coined by Timothy Morton to describe a form of ecological awareness. I'm interested in parsing the relationship here between the ecological and the technological. Ambient media has often been generalized as producing a sort of diffuse, boundary-dissolving affect. I hope to complicate this a bit by focusing also on the importance of form and structure in Lin's work, the tension between form and formlessness, and also between boredom and frustration, which I hope will also inform my conclusions about the nature of digital subjectivity in general. And I'm very excited to work through these ideas in the Cogut seminar this year. Thank you so much.